is a mandatory broadcast for all you Imperial Moffs, sector governors, system overseers and planetary chiefs of staff, as the enemies of peace are at our doorstep, around any corner, watching and just waiting to strike against the good Imperial citizens under your governance. But fear not, the Empire is here to bring your citizens the security and the protection they deserve from these dastardly assailants. All you have to do is watch the stars. Is your planet experiencing symptoms of anti-imperial behaviour and, Emperor forbid, rebel activity? If so, it's because these are the unfortunate realities instigated by those who oppose the Empire, as they do exist as a result of those who are bad at their job, aka you. But not to worry, there is a solution. Say hello to Project Stardust, which is in fact not mere stardust, but a very real thing in the works since the earliest days of the Empire, otherwise known as the Imperial DS Mobile Battle Station, or the Death Star. Made of only the toughest and highest quality quadanium steel plating stretching 45,000 square kilometers in surface area, 160 kilometers in diameter, and several kilometers deep into a massive internal frame, the Death Star is not just your ordinary space station, but a nigh impenetrable military stronghold, sporting the most technically complex long-distance targeting and navigational systems, an expansive array of cannon, turbolasers and batteries, docking stations and hangar bays for naval operation, and the most lavish accommodations capable of housing millions of personnel. Just look at those cozy and warm barracks. Tasteful. And the very thing that will make Imperial enemies weep, a planet-killing superlaser, the very reason for the station's construction. Destroying a planet takes an unbelievable amount of energy. The Death Star produces this with nothing less than only the most overkill hypermatter or solar ionization reactor in the galaxy. Making it entirely self-sufficient, which will guarantee that onboard operations will run as smoothly as they can. The superlaser directly relies on this reactor, but it needs to channel this energy through a vast amplifier and then purify it through 8 separate shafts, each containing 8 oversized kyber crystals, which you might know as the power source of a Jedi's lightsaber. This is what the Death Star uses to tear planets apart. A bit ironic, don't you think? But you can rest easy knowing that this weapon is in fact foolproof, as our recent testing initiatives have proven to us that the station will, thankfully, not tear itself apart while firing this super laser. Its targets, on the other hand... Now, you likely have space stations in orbit of your own planets, which is where they remain for as long as they are in operation. Why would you want another one, especially one as big as this? Well, the Death Star is anything but stationary. Behind the superlaser, we consider its second most powerful tool to be its ability to jump hyperspace, with its hyperdrive working in tandem to transport the gargantuan structure all around the galaxy. It can be anywhere, at any time, able to respond to a variety of different situations as they arise, meaning we're always just a jump, skip and a star away from peacefully and diplomatically invading the orbits of your planetary systems that may be under active conflict or brimming with out-of-control anti-imperial behaviour, to help bring them back under Imperial authority, utilising the station's overwhelming offensive capabilities, not unlike our ISDs. So then, is the Death Star by definition really a space station? But why have we called it the Death Star? Well, obviously because of the giant planet-killing super laser, but there is more to it than that. Because your Emperor intends for this weapon to be the main symbol that will finally put a stop to all of those going against Imperial rule, and by extension, the Emperor himself. The station's mere existence is a weapon in and of itself, and a powerful one at that, as we can guarantee that your citizens will be the best behaved they have ever been, because they'll forevermore always have a constant reminder of what is at stake looming over their heads. If you want to get fancy, you can use a term like symbolic imagery, which not only applies to the Death Star, but every Imperial vessel, every TIE fighter, every droid and every trooper, each acting as a consistent and overbearing reminder of the sheer technological might and unwavering advance of Imperial control, to stamp out any hope that the citizens of the galaxy can exist independently of the Empire, and safely too. After all, we just want you all to know that going against such a power would be a massive security risk, and is thus why we put an emphasis on scale, as the bigger something is, the less likely those of you looking to oppose it will not have the guts to continue pursuing that goal. Although some of you don't seem to get the hint, but you can bet that you will be the first in the Death Star's scope. The DS is the glorious evolution of Galactic Security. It is an untouchable symbol. It will wield existentialism as its puppet strings to ensure the galactic masses remain subordinate and safe. It will be a harbinger of death, summoned at the behest of the Emperor, as no one in their right mind would have any ability to take on a structure the size of a small moon, and that is exactly its purpose, planting the mere idea in the heads of the people that their entire planet can be wiped from the face of the galaxy by an incomprehensibly large constructed machine. This is what will keep the local systems in line, according to the Tarkin doctrine.
Fear will keep the local systems in line. Fear of this battle station.
And what of the rebellion?
It is fear, and the Death Star is the culmination of everything we have come to learn about building tools of fear and intimidation, which for you Moffs and Governors I can promise you will be a fantastic motivator for your star system to accept Imperial rule. Now, do keep this knowledge you have acquired of this weapon zipped away for now. We here in the Empire really do not like snitches. The cosmic herald of death will soon be ready to begin its duty, so use that as a constant reminder of just what is at stake. Only then will your planet have achieved peace and security, allowing your Imperial citizens to live in harmony under a safe, protective, ever watchful and possibly green sky. Thanks to the Emperor's newest tool, I hope your planet will be filled with countless well-behaved citizens for many years to come, because the Death Star is an unstoppable... What? I didn't think we were actually going to use it. I thought it was just going to be like, oh, we're going to use it, you better behave. Ugh. Okay, listen, so a lot has happened since that first holorail. For a start, the Bureau have now entrusted me with full responsibility of writing these scripts, and I'm now no longer near as zealous or as stupid as I was when I first recorded that. Well, maybe that latter part still holds true, but anyway. The Death Star has since then become the biggest thorn in our side, with some very small but significant oversights and deliberate acts of sabotage that we were all too occupied to notice, resulting in the total destruction of the first Death Star at the hand of the rebels. But overall, the Empire hasn't kicked the bucket yet, let's just say. So how did we move forward from Yavin? Did we reevaluate our stance on such a project? Did we shift priorities? Did we actually do something to improve the lives and bring security to the galaxy and its citizens? The DS-2 Mobile Battle Station is the bigger and more ferocious version of its predecessor. If the first Death Star was built to be a constant reminder to galactic citizens of the dangers of opposing the Empire, then this thing is being built to unleash sheer terror from the get-go. This is a super weapon designed to oppress and subjugate to a degree far less subtle than its predecessor, destroying planets without mercy or regard for those within its scope and laying waste to all enemies of the Empire. It's very extra, as some might say. How can I tell? Well, because they haven't even finished building the damn thing yet, and it is, practically speaking, at full operational capacity, even more so than the first Death Star when that one was completed. At 200 kilometers in diameter, you might think that it is an astonishing feat that we have managed to construct this behemoth of a machine in only 4 years when compared to the 20 plus years it took to build the first one. And to a degree, sure, but most of the logistics challenges faced during the deliberately stalled, mind you, construction and development of that first model had severely impacted the progress the Emperor wanted. So with this second one, it has been more a case of just rapidly gutting planets of their resources to continually supply the project, with many new and improved construction techniques being put into action, as well as utilising a vast detachment of automated building droids, which turns out is way faster than utilising non-consensual manual labour. So Gergerod has been making some strides compared to its predecessor Krennic. What I did neglect to mention for the first Death Star was the operational behaviour of its superlaser, which took many hours, even days in some cases, to recharge following the activation of its primary ignition sequence. And as far as aiming goes, it yielded better results when aiming towards larger unmoving targets, aka celestial bodies. The DS2 superlaser, on the other hand, is an upgrade in almost every way, as it can now fully recharge in a matter of mere minutes, which in this case is an essential upgrade for its newest feature, which is the ability to lock onto smaller moving targets to terminate them, doing so in one single shot. And since there are no shields that exist that can withstand that kind of power, the enemy will have to take some time to seriously think about how this changes the game of fleet warfare. How often can you say that about a space station? A certain ship getting on your nerves? Well then, just head on up to the guys at Superlaser Control, hand them the coordinates, and in the press of a few buttons, they'll just make that problem become one with the Force again. Mechanically speaking, the second is near identical to the first, sporting a similarly immense hypermatter reactor and kyber crystal set as the main components to allow the superlaser to discharge such potent power. But I know just what you're thinking, and don't worry, we accounted for that. No longer will there be any deliberately placed weak points, as we have every remaining essential thermal exhaust port fully accounted for, making sure that they are protected and capable of doing their job without leading directly into the station's core, so the rebels will not be able to pull off that stunt again, that's for sure. But even if you remove the planet-killing superlaser from the equation, the DS2 and its predecessor possess defensive capabilities that I would place on the deadly end of the scale, with over 40,000 different turbolaser and cannon types littered all across its surface, creating a line of fire that no one can possibly hide from, which from a tactical standpoint, being a sphere, provides a monumental advantage given it has very few areas where line of fire is obstructed besides both the big equatorial trenches and smaller subsurface trenches. In conjunction with naval support, enemy forces will really need to plan ahead if they even want to think about getting close to the station's surface. However, in warfare, the Death Star will most likely not be on the very front within a battle zone. I hope you didn't forget that this is still a space station after all, one the size of a very small moon. It will be positioned instead as far as it needs to be to sufficiently provide distant cover fire, while acting as a crucial support hub that naval forces can use for repair and resupply. And to me, that certainly beats retreating entirely from a sector undergoing active conflict, or relying on local stations and planetary bases for support when they might not have the capability to supply such massive ships, and even then, the presence of civilization might not exist in that sector at all. So the DS is pretty damn useful in that regard if you ask me. For the newer rebels that are watching, you guys will see it reside as this looming shadow over the battlefield, so do keep a keen eye out, as that superlaser could light up at any given time and eradicate your particularly troublesome capital ships. That is, assuming of course that it is not being bothered by your starfighters trying to enter the station's internals, at which point turbo and superlaser support for you guys in the Imperial Navy will not be as optimal. Okay, listen, this thing is for sure not the be-all and end-all, and it is important that we keep that in mind, as we have come to learn the hard way that this thing is nowhere near as invulnerable as the Bureau or High Command wanted it to be. But hey, at least we now know that this thing will fare much better when it has the support of an actual fleet of Imperial capital ships, as opposed to just starfighters. But hey, mistakes happen. It's just that some mistakes cost the lives of millions. As far as the technical attributes of the DS2 go, there are a staggering amount of upgrades and gizmos housed deep within the bowels of the station that were not present in its predecessor, and I could discuss them, but then we would be here for hours and that would be very boring. But it's got all the essentials for naval ops, including internal hangars, crew accommodations, armories, reactor and superlaser control, countless maintenance shafts, war strategy and conflict management rooms. You get the idea. So let's just move on and revisit what I said in the past and ask ourselves again this time, can the Death Star really solve all your problems? To which I think you already know the answer. If you are a Moff or sector governor that has not took one look at Yavin and hung up your loyalties to the Emperor at this point, you know that the Death Star is, as I said, a powerful symbol that will keep those under your egocentric rule and constant fear of the planet-wrecking power you can now call upon when things don't go your way. Just threaten them with their inevitable extinction and they'll all fall right back in line, won't they? To an extent, yes, but as Yavin has proven, that is not the case. Not anymore at least, as the station's reputation has been all but tarnished at the whim of Skywalker and his X-Wing. All it took was just one press of a button to destroy the facade and show the galaxy that they can take this thing on. The Death Star no longer possesses the same mystique that it would have had before Yavin, as even some of the much higher ranking Imperials were so confident and in awe of the station's supposed invincibility. And can you blame them? Absolutely. But it is a small moon-sized station. They thought they wouldn't even need ISDs to provide that crucial support it needed. They thought that the same issues capital ships face on the daily from starfighters wouldn't even be a problem for this thing. But alas, look how well that line of thinking worked out. As a result, we are seeing a largely mixed response from those now inspired by the heroics of the rebellion and feel they can take it on, and others who prefer not to interfere with the war effort. So, going forward, ISD and starfighter support is a crucial must for most situations that the station will find itself in. With regard to the station and its capabilities for resupply and transportation for us military types, this part at least will be a pretty big benefit, being able to relocate a vast amount of troops and even act as a temporary accommodation for those troops during planetary offensives or assaults on enemy-occupied territory, deploying a sheer tsunami of infantry and armoured core vehicles to very easily overwhelm even the most formidable rebel detachments. And why stop there? With so many hangars around its equator, the station can constantly churn out and take on board thousands of starfighters at any given time, forcing rebel fleets to work their way through a wall of ties before they can even reach the surface defences, with no deliberately placed thermal exhaust events putting it at risk of being destroyed this time. That is, unless daring pilots are willing to fly their way through what exhaust ports do remain and face the interior's labyrinthian steel chasms and tight winding ship-sized shafts to reach the reactor. But that probably won't ever happen. At this stage, this is ultimately just another Imperial Navy structure to be destroyed, similar to Star Destroyers, similar to TIE Fighters, with its biggest weakness being enemy starfighters, which, to be honest, really rings true for most Imperial Navy vessels at this point, because extreme scale for the sake of intimidation factor is the less than ideal link holding the Death Star back here, as fighters are simply way too small, and it is way too big for it to fully be able to focus fire against oncoming squadrons. The same issue appeared in the SSDs, with both these ships and this station being as big as they are for a reason that cannot quite be discerned practically other than a display of force rather than any feasible military use. And that quite reminds me of the main reason for such a design. The Tarkin Doctrine. That is the main culprit at the heart of the Death Star's design philosophy. The doctrine, which was influenced on Tarkin's theory of rule by fear, simply surmises, and I quote, "Overwhelming displays of force rather than force itself are the most effective means of maintaining the loyalty and the security of all allied worlds." This is ironic coming from Tarkin, who, should I remind you, is now an evaporated haze of dust and particles in space, so Look how well that theory worked out for him. Even now, well after his passing, this doctrine still lives on, persisting throughout the Empire to an even more prevalent degree, as Imperial superweapons and supersized ships are now the norm for the Imperial Navy. So you know what? Let's just see how this new Death Star does. After all, the first one could have just been a fluke, and there is no way that statement is going to come back to bite us in the ass this time. They should have invested into getting better fighters for the Starfighter Corps. Imagine what power we could hold, how we could dominate the art of dogfighting, how many enemy fighters we could take down. I'm telling you, the Starfighter Corps could very easily be the most powerful branch of the Empire. No, the Death Star will not solve your problems, at least not all of them. However, if you want to blow up planets, then in that case, we've got you covered. But no matter whether you are an Imperial Moff, naval personnel, or just the average trooper, I want to know just how you can benefit from the capabilities of this massive space station. You know where to comment. But if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment and subscribe to become a part of the Empire today. And with that, long live the Empire, and may the Force be with you.